In this particular episode, we are going to be talking about what her process was like looking for a job or getting a job after she graduated from the University of Ottawa. It's not going to be a very long episode because in the last episode, we talked about the majority of her work experience, which was her being employed during school. So you can go check that out if you're a student that's aspiring to go to Canada, specifically also Ottawa or any other province, really. I feel like the advice she gave, the things we talked about will apply across the board. I think it's an interesting episode, so check that out. So Trina, in addition to what we talked about last time, there's a lot you covered, but one of the main things that I feel we could kick this off with is how your job search differed uh, when you finished your program compared to when you were doing your program. How did the job search differ for you?
Yeah. So I didn't actually start job searching for postgraduate positions after I finished my program. I didn't wait until after because I didn't want to be in a position where I was so anxious about where my income was coming from. I started my job search, I want to say like 4 months before my program ended. So in the last semester of the last semester of my master's program. And with that, I was a lot more intentional about the organizations and institutions that I was reaching out to. I wanted something that is related to my field. Before, I was looking for something that would just put money in my pocket. Now I'm more intentional about gaining the Canadian experience and starting to get myself into the legal field in Canada and gaining the knowledge and skills that would be required to succeed in the field here. So that was the difference between searching for a job during my program in the early days of my program and then towards the end close to my graduation date.
Okay. For those who do not know as well, she did her master's in law. I don't know the specificities. You maybe just laid out for them what the master's program was called.
Yeah, so it was just the Master of Laws here at the University of Ottawa. It was more general, so I had a lot of flexibility. I didn't really specify in international law or, criminal law as most people do. I did more of a general thing, but I was still getting the in-depth knowledge that I was searching for when I came for the master's program. So, yeah, I was able to tap into different areas of law and still continue to test out what my interests were, but also have a deeper understanding of these different fields that I was able to do in my undergraduate program as well.
Hmm. What kind of methods did you use to search for this job now? Because you've mentioned that it was different from the search that you underwent when you were doing your undergrad. So I
Yeah.
take it also that the process was different. So could you take us through that?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I was doing my master's, at the beginning of my master's program, I was just going out and distributing my resume. I wasn't really picky about, who hires me. I was just open to work. I just wanted to work and get money in my pocket. So I went into the mall, for example, and just distributed my resume. Went called in companies, maybe talked to a couple of friends and saw if they could maybe connect me to someone or an employer if they know they're hiring. That was more so the approach I took before. After, I was a lot more forward and direct with, for example, law firms. The group that I was targeting was completely different. I was focused on law firms or governmental organizations and specifically the legal departments of those organizations. And I still took kind of the same approach. So some places I applied on Indeed, but other places I just called in and just said, you know what, listen, I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to work for free. I just want the experience at this point in time. And if you like the work that I'm doing, you can choose to hire me later on. But for now, I just need the work experience. And that's why I started a lot earlier because very few people would hire you on the spot when you just call them in. Most
Mm,
people would want to see what your work is like. So that was the approach I took. I said, I'm willing to work for free. Before, I wasn't willing to work for free because I wanted the money. But in
Yeah.
this 4 months before I completed the program, I was like, I'm willing to work for free, show you the skills and what I bring to the table. And if you like that, then you can proceed to hire me. If you don't, that's okay as well. You've gained from my work, I've gained from earning the experience. We part our ways, and that's that.
Mm. I feel like your priorities changed definitely. It's like, here it's just like, how can I survive? But now on this other side, I'm trying to get permanent residency. I'm trying to, set my life up. So
Yeah,
your priorities change and you have to kind of take a hit somewhere, right?
exactly.
So you mentioned using Indeed to search for the job after your graduate program. I know you didn't get your job from Indeed, but based off of your experience, do you think that's a feasible option, or you were just shooting in the dark and hoping something sticks?
Honestly, I was just shooting in the dark and hoping something sticks. I
Mm,
will say though, one of the positions that I applied for on Indeed, I did get to the interview stage, but they just got back to me a bit too late from
mm,
this position I'm currently working at. This position was what I really, really wanted. The Indeed job was more of like a backup, I'd say. But they then again they got back to me too late when I had already started this position. I'm what 2 weeks in. 2 weeks in, I can't leave the job that I'm at to come and work
mm.
for you. It's just not right. It wouldn't look good for me, and you probably wouldn't perceive it well either. Because if I'm leaving a job that I've just joined 2 weeks ago, what am I going to do when I come to your organization?
Yeah, it shows a lack of loyalty in a certain way, I would say.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it worked, but it was one of those things where I was like, you know what, just drop your resume wherever it is.
mm,
I was doing what I did at the beginning in person, but now on Indeed. I was just firing
mm,
out my resume wherever, in law firms, and see wherever it lands.
mm.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Now you've mentioned having got a full-time job and this guy's reaching out to you. A question that has popped up for me is it possible to do part-time at law firms? I know this is a very niche question, will probably apply only to lawyers that are watching or, prospective lawyers, but is that a thing?
Um, it is a thing, it is possible, but very few law firms would accept it.
Mm,
Just because working on a part-time basis, you're only giving them probably like 2 days a week. There's not really much you can do for them. They can't really benefit from your work if you're only doing 2 days a week.
mm,
That at most you can do is maybe like help them with research, I'd say. If you're helping them with research or helping them, I don't know, reach out to the clientele or the possible customers out there, that's as much as you can do. But the core, like the meat part of the law firm and the work that they do,
mm.
90% of the work that they do, you may not really be able to contribute that much. So that's one of the things that I struggled with, because I was considering doing a part-time job, but finding someone to hire me for less than 30 hours a week was the tricky part. No one wanted to hire an international student who's only going to give me 16 to 20 hours of their week.
It's like hiring a student.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. So yeah, it was tricky. That part-time work is tricky in the formal settings.
mm,
I say formal as in private organizations, 9 to 5 type of jobs.
mm. You're back up.
I'm back. My Zoom, my Google Chrome just crashed.
Okay. So you were saying?
I was saying part-time positions in law firms or even in like organizations, if you're
Mm,
an international student, it's a bit more tricky.
mm.
It's a bit more tricky. Most organizations won't hire an international student on a part-time basis. You'll find a selective few. I'm not saying it's impossible. You'll find a
Mm.
selective few, but finding that selective few is what the tricky part is.
Okay, so you've mentioned how it's not common for law firms or any professional settings to allow people to work part-time because they don't really receive like full value for their money from these people. Of course, we must consider that they are being paid per hour, so really you get what you pay for. if you really think
Yes,
about it. But
exactly.
we just leave it at that. Okay. Probably the next question I would have is, um, how what have been the major differences since you switched from working this 20-hour work week to now, I take it 40 plus hours a week, or in the neighborhood about 40 hours. What have been the major changes for you since you got into this position?
Man, life.
uh,
it's it's literally night and day, because when I was working the 20 hours a week, I had a lot of time to just lazy around and hang around and study, but also be pretty like calm about things. Now it's like I have to have a structure. And if I don't, I'm not going to be able to get around, because we
mm,
work 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I have to be able to maximize on the hours in the morning, and then
mm,
also the 3 or 4 hours that I get in the night before I go to bed. But for that, my full day is basically taken. So it's definitely a lot more demanding in terms of your time management. The other ones you would get scheduled for like 4 hours, 4 hour shifts. You're in, let's say 12 p.m., you're out by 4 p.m. Your whole day you still have your whole day basically. It's just a couple of hours. It's like going into a 3 hour lecture and then coming out and you're done, you know? But this is like, no, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., a full 8 hours of your day, 5 days a week taken out. And then all you have is the morning, the evening, and then possibly your weekends to get stuff done, the stuff that you need to get done. So
mm,
it's different. It's definitely different.
mm. I mean, it's a full-time job now. It's adulting on another level. I'm guessing also
Exactly.
responsibility wise, right? Um, Now you have to cater to everything, because at first I take it you are being supported at a little bit through college because it's just 20 hours, right? So now it's
Yeah,
budgeting and figuring out how best to make your budget last the whole month until your next paycheck.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The advantage here is that you get paid twice a week. Not twice a week, twice a month.
I was
So
gonna
they'll
be
pay
like,
you,
yo,
you're gonna be like,
twice
huh?
a week? Sign me up.
No. I wish.
uh,
It's twice a month. So, and
mm,
I think that's the standard. Even when I was working in retail, it was twice a month. But
mm,
here, obviously, you're having a lot more income coming in the during each 2 week paycheck that you receive. So you're able to plan and play around with your finances. It's not like you have to wait until the end of the month before you can actually survive. There's money that's coming in midway for you to
mm,
survive on. But as you said, budgeting is completely, it increases. You have to learn how to budget. You have to learn how to pay your bills on time. You have to learn how to pay rent on time. You have to learn how to, grocery shop and deal with inflation and everything crazy that's going around in the economic aspect of Canada. So it's definitely an adjustment. It's
mm,
an adjustment. Before it was a lot easier, because 20 hours a week, trying to survive on working 20 hours a week, if you're making, let's say, minimum wage, it's not really that much, to be honest. There are some people who work 20 hours a week and be lucky enough to get like $25 per hour. That you can find a way of surviving on that. But 20 hours a week on minimum wage, you're not making that much money. So surviving on it it's doable, but it's really, really hard.
mm,
You'll have to cut back on a lot of things. Um, but now you have a bit more wiggle room with what you can do, and the kind of things, the expenses that you're incurring. It's definitely more adulting.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but you're managing the fact that you're
Oh,
still here and you still have your
absolutely.
job and all that, right? Um,
I don't have a choice.
exactly. You have to survive. And I like
Yeah.
how we pivoted to you now moving out and having to fend for yourself. I feel like it would be an interesting video for the audience. Going through that process, like what was your thought process? Now I'm moving out of the school hostels. I'm looking for an apartment in Ottawa. What do I need? I'm sure there are certain things you didn't even anticipate you needed until you got your own place, right?
Oh, yes. It was scary. And honestly, I tried to drag on living in hostels as long as possible because the thought of coming, I mean, I'm in the outer world, but the thought of coming into the outer world and having to pay rent prices here and having to pay electricity. In hostels, everything is included. You're paying X amount, but it includes your rent, it includes electricity, it includes water, it includes heating, it includes, laundry. Everything is included in that one amount. But once you start moving out into apartments that are not student friendly, that are more of like young professional or adult friendly per se, you're looking at, I'm paying X amount, but I have to top up, let's say, $100 on electricity. And then I have to top up, let's say, $50 a month on laundry. Then I have to top up, like the numbers just keep racking up as you go on. So it was definitely scary, but I had to do it. I didn't really have a choice. It's like you have to dive in head first and figure out how exactly you're going to make ends meet. Some people, what most people do, perhaps, is something we can dive into later on in another episode, because there's so much to talk about this particular area. But one thing that people do is just getting two jobs. That's such a common thing here, is having your standard 9 to 5 job, 5 days a week, and then having something that you can do perhaps in the evenings or over the weekends, something else that just brings some small cash in to help you survive a bit more or live a much more comfortable lifestyle.
Have you considered getting a second job on the weekends?
I honestly have. I have considered it. Not because what I'm receiving is not enough. I'm living comfortably, but it's just good to have a bit more extra cash for like unanticipated expenses. For example, the electricity bill will go from, let's say, $60 to the next bill you're getting is $80 or $100, and you don't even know where that came from. Perhaps you're using the oven too much, you might be able to have to cut back on that. But it's just like unanticipated expenses where you'd need a bit more like extra cash that's why I considered it. I just haven't really pursued that route because I have so much on my plate with trying to become a lawyer. There's a lot of exams that I'm in the process of doing, and I use my weekends to study for those exams. So if my weekends are now taken with a second job, I won't really have much time to study for the exams. And in order to progress further, I have to pass the exams. So I've had to kind of forego the second job for now, at least. I've had to put that on hold as I focus on these exams, and then once I get them out of the way, maybe I'll reconsider getting a second job.
It makes sense. For now, this is your second job on the weekends. I've called it. I've booked you every
Boom.
Saturday. Boom. Saturday, Sunday, one day, one of them for 1 hour, maybe two. We'll come here and chop it up. Guys in the audience, drop some thumbs up down in the comment section if that's what you want, because it's what I want. And yeah, let's get it. I feel like we need to dive in a little more on that, but in a separate
Yeah.
video. I'm thinking even the next video we could talk about you finding a place in Ottawa and talking about this second job idea that you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
But just as promised, for this video, I want it to be short and sweet because we covered a lot in our last video. Check that out. I'm going to link it down below. Is there something maybe you feel like we haven't touched on that you would like the audience to know, that you feel it might help someone who's coming to live in Ottawa or in Canada in general,
Yeah.
and wants to
Yeah.
settle after they graduate?
Yeah. I think one thing that people come with when they're coming to Canada is huge expectations for a phenomenal life. And you will live a good, comfortable life once you come to Canada. But my advice to you is to lower the expectations slightly. Because when you come with such grand expectations, there's a lot more room for disappointment, especially as you're just starting off your settling phase. When you're in your settling phase and you're trying to establish yourself in Canada, it's not as straightforward as many people make it seem. So come with the expectation of, having a bit of hurdles, like some hurdles to jump over, and be willing to jump over those hurdles, knowing what's waiting to come, what will be coming. But yeah, don't expect something phenomenal from the get-go. It might happen to you if you're lucky, but for most people, it doesn't happen that way. You have to go through a couple of hurdles before you get to that point. That would be my advice. And that goes for education-wise, that goes for job hunting, to settling in Canada and establishing yourself in Canada. It applies to everything Canada related. Is there'll be a couple of hurdles that you will have to cross over, especially as an immigrant, before you get to that comfortable life that you've dreamed of.
It's like you need to manage your expectations.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. I guess that's a solid gem. That's going to make a nice short um on the channel for sure. Managing expectations, because I've had a lot of people talk about coming to Canada, and there are these grand, ambitions and ideas, and I'm a big idea person. I like people who think big. I like people who dream in ways that scare others. I like that. But what you've said is important. Managing expectations. That way, even when things don't go your way, you're like, it's okay. It's not that bad,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
kind of primed yourself for that.
Yeah. And it's not even that you don't even you have to completely stop dreaming big. Canada is one of those countries where you can dream big and have the hopes that it will come to pass, but you don't expect it to happen in 2 years, because now you're,
Mm,
for example, earning more money than you would back home, or you're living a more comfortable life than you would back home. It will take time, as it
mm.
would anywhere else. It would take time. So you just need to be patient and play the wait game.
I think we should even bust that myth, like as a final, as a closing to this video. It's like people who or moving to Canada and you start earning money. Let me not say people, but just in general, even me when I was that side, like you are generally earning more money than you would be earning in your home country. Mostly if you come, like I come from Uganda, you come from Uganda, Kenya. These are places we've been. Definitely the pay is different on a monthly basis. But one thing that people tend not to think of, or personally I didn't even think of much, like I had a vague idea, but I didn't really think about, was the fact that they're paying you high is because of the standard of living. That
Exactly.
means you go there and something that would cost you this number of shillings is going to cost you this number of dollars, and you're asking yourself, this
Yeah.
is when you translate it to like Uganda shillings, like what is this? you know so I get that. Is that something you've experienced? Could you
Oh,
share your experience on that?
definitely. Definitely. Because you'll go to the grocery store and you'll buy eggs, for example. Eggs have
Mm.
recently gone up in price.
So
And
this is
you're
a
paying,
recent example.
this is recent, as in,
Mm.
as of probably Sunday last week. I went to the
Mm.
grocery store and I was buying a carton of 12 eggs. Initially, it used to be, when I first came to Canada, I think it used to be like maybe $2.75.
Mm.
Now it's like $3.50. It's almost like $1 difference. And you see that, you
Wow.
convert it back home and you're like, this is like 4,000 Ugandan shillings. What could I
Mm.
do with this money back home, just
Mm.
for an additional, just to buy a carton of eggs. So
Mm.
it's mind-boggling, honestly, having to do the conversion. But one thing I always tell people is, when you come here, you have to realize that it's going to be completely different from back home. You shouldn't have the mindset. One thing I struggled with in the beginning was having the mindset of converting it to Ugandan shillings to see, or Kenyan shillings to see what the equivalent would be.
Mm.
You will not enjoy your life here. You will not spend a single dollar, because everything will look so expensive to you. And so you
Mm.
have to obviously be realistic and say, if something is costing me $200, $300, think twice about it a little bit and really ponder on that decision. But if it's
Mm.
costing you $5, that's $5, even $3. That's pretty cheap for Canada.
Exactly.
For Canada and for the Western world, that's pretty cheap. Back home, it sounds very expensive, but for
Mm.
here, it's pretty cheap. So you have to really, your mindset will have to adjust. Otherwise,
Mm.
you'll struggle. You'll struggle to spend even a single dollar that you earn.
And while we're speaking even about cheap, Lemfi, if you're trying to send money home for cheap, they basically don't charge you anything, and they have the craziest rates when sending money to Kenya to Uganda to Ghana to Nigeria, from the UK and and Canada as well. UK and Canada, you can send money for so cheap, it's unbelievable. And you can use my link in the description, my referral link, to get yourself $30 as soon as you sign up and send your first $100 on the platform. You get $30 free. They kick you back and you get to save that money. You could send that to a relative, to a friend. And we've already spoken about how much the difference is when we talk about these currencies. Uganda shillings, Canada shillings. Oh, I say Canada shillings.
Canada shillings.
Jesus. Jesus. Okay. Canadian dollars. That is crazy. Okay. When you send Canadian shillings back to Uganda,
You said
Kenya.
it again.
I say that again?
You said Canadian shillings.
Hey, yo, no. Trust me, I know what
Canadian
I'm saying.
dollars.
If you're watching this, I know what I'm saying. Use my use my code, that's Ambrose, down below. And I'm going to leave that behind because at this rate I'm going to keep calling them Canadian shillings. Yeah. So this has been such a dope episode. I've enjoyed myself. I would like to implore the viewers, if you have any questions, ask them down below. Trina is settled in Canada. Basically, she's working on becoming PR, and yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of her on the channel. I know I say this in other videos, but I can't say this enough. It's an opportunity for you to get a perspective into what it's like to live in Canada as an international student, in Ottawa as an international student. And definitely we'll have more guests on as well. Trina, is there something you want to leave with our audience? You want to let them know?
Let us know if you have any questions, if there's anything in Ottawa that you'd love to see. I'd be willing to take you around, any food stores that you'd want to see, any sites that you'd want to see, the university. Let us know in the comments below and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, sir. And with that, we are going to end the podcast.